Support for this podcast comes from the patrons at patreon.com/FMLFPL. Okay, welcome to another Fireside Chat. This is Alon. Today we're joined by Kees van Hemmen of the Devils in the Details podcast. Kees, how are we?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I stumbled on your name a little bit, so I feel bad already. But, for me, this is early morning. So this is turning into an annual tradition a little bit now. I used to always throw it at the end, but let me just ask you from the jump. Where can people follow you on social media? And what is Devils in the Details? Where can people check it out?
Yeah, so you can follow me at Hemmen Kees. Kees being spelled Kees. Hemmen is Hemmen. So those two words in the opposite order that I said them on Twitter. And then also I'm on the Devils in the Details podcast, where we talk about Manchester United from like an analytical / video analysis perspective. Try to give an analysis edge to a fan podcast, I guess you could say. And you can find that at Devils ITD Pod on Twitter. And we released an episode this morning. So
beautiful.
There's fresh content. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll obviously throw everything in the show notes, all the links and stuff. And just wanted to add, this is Kees' second time on FMLPL. Aaron, the other host, has also been on FMLPL. So obviously I'm a fan. I've tweeted it before. Every time I get around to listening, I always learn something. There's always like a point of view I hadn't taken into account. I'm learning something about stats or a player or tactics. So very, very much a pod that I support, and everyone should check it out. All right, let's talk about Man United. So
let's do it.
I think the more fun place to start is probably in attack. I mean, I've been saying this all last season and all this season. I still feel like people don't really realize how much of a leap Garnacho took, and now he's just like truly a young attacking superstar at this point, with like how good of a season he had last season. And for me, I mean, he's not expensive at all in fantasy. Obviously he's more expensive than he was last year, but he's not expensive. And my only hesitation is like, well, aside from the team is kind of injured and maybe messed up, is like, do you think he's made himself sort of undroppable at this point with how good he's been? Because all of a sudden there's so many guys in the sort of like front four. I know Højlund's hurt, but Sancho's there and Ahmad's there and Rashford's fit and Xerxes and all these guys.
Yeah, I'd be pretty shocked if he doesn't start 30 matches this season, I would say. Yeah. Because I think there's a very strong case to be made that he's United's best attacker, and B, he's the most versatile. Like, he can genuinely play the right wing, which I don't think you can say of Rashford. Like, he's done it many, many times, but Garnacho is just far more effective there than Rashford is, which I think just gives him a better path to consistent minutes, kind of irrespective of his form. And even when he's not playing well, he's never playing as badly as Antony when Antony isn't playing well. Yeah. So, like, I think it's pretty hard to drop him. And obviously Ahmad throws a wrinkle in things. Sancho being back kind of throws a wrinkle in things, but not enough to make me think Garnacho isn't basically a nailed-on starter, and or maybe the only person I'm convinced, at least of the front three players, convinced is actually going to produce. So.
Yeah, and I guess like his versatility makes him, a little more secure for minutes, because he did play like almost half the games at left wing last year, I feel like also. Talk to me about Ahmad. I mean, a lot of people are really excited about what he's been doing in preseason. I haven't really watched the preseason matches, but I'm hearing that he's playing really well. Hard player to project, I mean, from an outsider, right? Like, I don't watch Manchester United preseason games and random cup games he's playing in, but, he played less than 400 minutes last season. Season before was in the championship with Sunderland, putting up good goal numbers? Like, I just don't know much about him. Like, what do you expect
Well,
from
I'm
him?
sure you remember his best moment in the United kit
I
because it's pretty
remember.
hard to.
I remember that moment.
Yeah. But that's basically all he's had. I mean, he had a header. I want to say it was against Milan in the Europa League, like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And those are his moments. As for Ahmad, he has been really impressive in preseason. I still think the big question mark with him is how he translates to the intensity of the Premier League, and the preseason, even against Premier League sides, does not simulate that.
No.
And so, with that in mind, I think there's a real chance he gets major minutes, especially early on. Now that Højlund is hurt, I think that may mean, this isn't what's been said, but I do think you're going to wind up with Rashford through the middle sometimes.
Okay.
At least in the first few months until Højlund's back. You're probably going to see Sancho in the middle, which is just going to create some strange dynamics. I think that's going to complicate Ahmad's minutes, because I think it's harder to play Ahmad if you don't have a true center forward, because he's not that sort of like inside forward winger who's going to come inside, score goals, get in behind, so much as he's more of like a creative type who wants to get on the ball, come short. So it's tough to project. I do think he's going to get minutes. I think he's going to get starts, especially this opening month, because it seems like there's going to be availability issues.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, though, I'm not personally confident that this is going to be like a producer, somebody who does a lot with the minutes they get. But I do think he'll get minutes. I think you're looking at minimum 1,500 minutes this season, up to 2,500, 3,000 minutes in the league if he impresses. I lean more towards he's going to be fine and more of a squad piece than like somebody who breaks through. But I could be wrong.
It's just hard when they don't have the minutes and the data to be like, oh, this is his clear upside, or like this is like obviously what will translate. And that's what's hard for me. Like when I'm just looking at his numbers, right? It's like, okay, yeah, he scored 13 goals. He was 5 over his XG 2 years ago in the championship. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, the numbers in the championship, when you really dig into them, aren't that impressive, which is definitely to a certain extent informs my take, but also his whole thing when United bought him was that his dribbling upside was supposed to be incredible. And I think it's just become increasingly clear over the years that he does not have elite acceleration, and the size doesn't really facilitate it either, which means he's more of like a combination play guy, and that's where the upside comes from. And I'm not sure. You have to be incredible at that to have like output from it. And so that'll be interesting to see. It's definitely one of the more interesting storylines, but I wouldn't say I'm bullish on it.
Okay, fair. I was laughing while you were talking because on last season's pod with you, we talked about maybe is Sancho really going to play false 9? And like here we are again a year later, and it's like I guess Sancho might play some false 9. Yeah,
the whole situation with Sancho is incredibly strange. Because it's kind of gone unaddressed that like it's been very quiet the way he's just kind of slipped back into team media and back into the squad, and now it looks like he's going to play a role.
I guess they just hugged it out and they're friends again, and he's back. And
but when that stuff happens, usually somebody says something. You know what I mean? It's like somebody gets asked the question and they're like, we had a conversation and we decided it's best for both of our careers for us to move forward. It's a bunch of word vomit.
And the fact that hasn't happened must be intentional. I mean, you're right. That no one's out. Like they must have told people like, we're not talking about that. We're not addressing that. Everything's fine. But I am curious to hear like, why do you think it may not be Xerxes down the middle? I mean, I know that he may not be a classic like goal scoring box number 9, but it just seems like if Højlund's hurt, he's probably the best option there, right? You think he's just not up to speed?
Yeah, I mean that's what ETH said the other day in an interview. Is that he doesn't expect him to be, or he thinks there's a chance that he's not completely up to speed with how we want to play and just get game speed, match fitness for the opening week. Under which circumstances it would be Sancho. Sancho through the middle, Rashford on the left. He didn't really say who would be on the right, which is strange to me because I don't know. Why are you buying a striker in early July if you can't get him up to speed for the opening week when your first choice center forward is injured? But
whatever, and I'm all for
whatever.
player safety, but if
Yeah.
a player literally plays 0 minutes in the tournament, like maybe could you come back sooner and get ready for the season? Like you know what I mean? And Garnacho too, like he's great, but I don't think he really was playing for Argentina, right? And they're just not back.
Yeah.
And
I think he got a start in a few subs though,
okay,
so at least
he got some minutes,
played minutes, was locked in. I think Xerxes literally came in as a sub in like after the 90th minute in the Turkey match, and that's it.
Yeah, something like that. Just like head some balls away or something. But yeah, okay. So Xerxes, I mean, how do you feel about that transfer at the time? I mean, it's not expensive for a young attacker, but he's got a weird profile.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is, I'll start with the positives. He is incredibly technical for his size. He can legitimately dribble with the ball, and he's like 6'4". He's a very strong passer for his size, and he also is rapid and strong. So when you describe a center forward with like, when you start there, it's like, oh, that's awesome. Like that's really exciting
cool
stuff. But the other side of it is, and I've been watching him a long time. I've been watching him basically. He was actually with Feyenoord, which is like the club I grew up supporting in the Netherlands. What he moved from their youth sides to Bayern Munich's youth sides, and I was watching with Bayern's youth sides, and he always, even when he was like 17, 18 playing youth football, would like drop really deep out of like the center forward position into like deep midfield to receive the ball. And like he got away with it then. He still scored like more than a goal a game just because he was so athletically dominant. But now in senior football, he's just not a goal scorer. Because he doesn't spend enough time there. It's not even that I don't think he could develop into one if he changed everything he did. But the player he is like the falsest of false nines. Like he's so deceptive the way he looks versus the way he plays. So I think he's going to make United better. But if he, I think I've said this a few times now. If he were to play every minute this season, I'm not positive he hits 10 goals.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Like I think probably the over-under would be like 10 and a half.
Wow.
If he played every minute. And I think he's going to play, I think he probably gets 20 starts. Only 10 to 15 of those are at center forward.
So
plus,
do you think that maybe the plan is like Bruno's turning 30 and maybe Xerxes can play behind a striker? Like sort of like, you know, again, I'm a Liverpool fan. Like people would never stop talking about Firmino playing behind a striker. Even when Liverpool were at the peak of their powers, winning the league and Champions League, it's like, oh, maybe Firmino. I'm like, no, don't move Firmino. Like it's all good. But they would just relentlessly talk about that. And, you know, kind of Havertz too, like when Arsenal bought him, right? It was kind of like, oh, he's going to be this left 8, like support striker guy. And obviously that didn't last. He started playing striker, but I don't know. Is that the vision you think with Xerxes or?
I don't think the vision is turn him into a support striker, let's say, rather than like a 10. At least in the short term. But I do think he's going to play all kinds of unorthodox roles. I think he'll play probably as like a false winger a lot of the time. I could definitely see that just because we have a weird personnel. Like we have this weird disconnect between we have probably 4 forwards who you're happy to be playing in like a top 4 attack. It's Garnacho, Rashford, Højlund, and him, Bruno. And then maybe Ahmad, but I'm going to leave Ahmad out of this because he's played like 400 career minutes. Those 4. None of those 4 is a natural right winger. One of them isn't really a striker. So you just got a strange assortment of tools, and 2 of them have also been pretty injury prone in their careers to this point. So I just think you're going to see some strange tactical solutions. As for the best case scenario plan with him, I think this year it'll ideally just be rotation minutes at center forward plus some like, tactical, maybe a front two in certain matches, stuff like that. But yeah, it seems plausible to me that it turns into a front two where he's behind the striker, and it's not the traditional 4-4-2, but more of like a 4-1, 4-4-1-1, or a 3-5-1-1, or whatever that takes. Because otherwise, I don't see what his path is into the first team other than benching Højlund, and I don't think that was the plan with this transfer.
I mean, the fee
doesn't demand that he become a starter.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. The fee is sort of just like, if there's a promising 22-year-old attacker, you're not paying less than that these days, right? Like, I mean, it's not like, I feel like it wasn't that long ago where teams just, didn't value age profiles enough, or didn't look at, data enough to really know what they're doing. And occasionally you would see a move like this for like 12 million, or like, wow, that's a really good deal. But it's just like that, they just don't fall through the cracks in the same way anymore, I don't think.
Yeah. And the other thing is, going back a little bit to what I said about his goal scoring, I think it would be really easy to say, oh, well, he's big and strong and fast and good with the ball, and he'll develop as a goal scorer. I think that is totally plausible, but I implore you to dig through the data of players who, at 23, he's 23 now, came to a higher level league and started scoring more than they were in the league where they were previously.
Right.
Like most guys who turn into elite or even like above average goal scorers are already scoring goals in volume by 23.
Right.
Like the exceptions are like Van Persie.
I have a really good. I have a really good exception for you. Kind of not a similar comp, but maybe a similar body type. Is like, I always thought Calvert-Lewin had such a weird career path, and when he came up, like, he was just this big, strong guy who got no shots and didn't score enough goals. And then, I mean, obviously recently he's been injury prone, but 22, 23, all of a sudden 13 goals, 16 goals in the league. And everyone's just like, oh my God, he's actually putting it together. Like, he's getting more shots and big chances. Like, the quality of his shots just went up, by like 50%. And it was just like, yeah, it can happen.
It does happen, but I would make the point, he was 22 the first year he had double digits in the Premier League.
Right.
So even then,
2
years on the aging curve is like, it's a lot, man.
It's a lot, yeah.
So I'm not saying it can't happen. It's just, I wouldn't bet on it. If you were come into the season like, I want to get cheap goals in FPL, this is not the place to find them.
Not the place to look. He sounds like he'll be a really interesting watch and a really good sub. Like, I can imagine this just like, United need a goal. He comes on in any of the 4 positions and like does a cool job. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it, but maybe not an FPL pick. I mean, yeah, so Højlund's injured, and we don't have to maybe go there now. I'm wondering about Bruno. I mean, he's always relevant in fantasy because sometimes Man United get 10 penalties in one season and he gets 18 goals. Lately hasn't been scoring that much in open play, hasn't been assisting that much in open play. I'm just wondering, like, is this sort of like his floor now? Because 3-4 years ago is like, he might be the best player in all of fantasy. And now he's just sort of like, like a 10-8, 8-8 kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is who he is. I think 10-8 is probably like the baseline. Because I do think that the 18-12 year was a strange microcosm of I think he took 9 penalties and made all 9. And I like, Premier League sides are not going to get 9 penalties on average. Like, I don't care who your dribblers are. I don't care who's touching the ball in the box. Like, that's not normal. And then, yeah, I mean, like, I just, even the best attacking midfielders, they're not getting more than 18 goal contributions in a year. Like,
no,
like, even like that's just the number. Like, that's just who he is. And I think,
I think De Bruyne is like the one exception in the world.
Exception, and how many times is he, like, he's not even always an exception to that. Like, I don't think he beats 18 goal contributions in the league every year. I think he does it relatively, like, it's part of his range of outcomes, but it's not like you're not banking on it.
Right.
Let me actually look at the numbers to make sure I'm not totally talking out of my rear end.
We're just talking. So for him, for De Bruyne, it's much different because it seems to be, I'm looking at his numbers, very minutes dependent. It's like if he's hitting close to 3,000 minutes, he's getting over.
Then he will hit.
He will hit that. But
yeah,
the point still stands. Most players are not hitting that. I've always said, and I continue to say, I think people don't realize how many goals, like 10 goals are. We're just used to these numbers of, 30 goal scorer in Holland and Salah and like these guys. And it's like most players, 10 goals would be a really good year. Like a winger or a 10, like that's a lot, that's like more than you think.
I mean, you and I were talking, we opened up this episode talking about Garnacho breakout season, 7 goals, 4 assists.
Yeah.
Like
breakout.
So I'll walk back the point on KDB because I'm looking at the numbers and he basically, if he plays minutes, he's going over those numbers. But nevertheless, I think the point stands. I think that is who Bruno is, and I think it's still a pretty valuable player.
Very valuable, yeah. I wonder, is he going to keep taking bad corners and set pieces, or is like Mount finally going to maybe take those from him or someone else?
So Ahmad has been taking. Actually, if you want to go listen to our podcast today, we just did an hour and a half on set pieces.
There we go.
Yeah, and went very, very in detail. If you're an Arsenal fan, we also went pretty in detail on them because our guest today was an Arsenal fan.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a little bit about Liverpool too, actually.
Everyone's got something to learn.
Yeah. But we talked about set pieces, and we've talked about how United just got a new set piece coach, and they've already run a routine that he ran with his previous side, Southampton.
Okay.
Which typically means in-swinging corners, which means Bruno definitely won't be taking or shouldn't be taking corners from the right side the way he has in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would suspect if Mount is playing, Mount will be taking the right-sided corners. So, that'll suppress to a certain extent. But you have to remember that Bruno is horrible at creating goals from corners. So it doesn't really matter.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah. But he'll still be the penalty taker. He's like a 90% career penalty taker. So
yeah. Okay, cool. Last guy maybe on attack, and then we'll do a little bit of defense. It's just like, where's Rashford at? I know he sort of came off with a knock, but like in my head, he's still, the left wing or whatever you want to call it, left forward is sort of his spot to lose. But again, it's getting crowded. Sancho's fit and playing. Is Rashford, he's been in the league for so long now, where he's no longer a promising player. He is who he is. We know, some years he'll score 17 goals, some years he'll score 5 goals, and that's just who he is now, right?
Yeah, I mean, if he plays to the level he played to last season, he will not be the starting left winger by the end of the year. So, I mean, it's just a question of whether he has another bounce back year. You know what I mean? I feel like he's done it 2 or 3 times now, where I've been like, he's probably just like an 8-9 goal a season guy, and then he'll have like the absolute upper range of what you could with that baseline. You know what I mean? Like, he's an 8, 9, 10 guy. He's like, all right, fine, I'll score 17.
I'll actually take an extra shot a game and score 17. You're like, what?
Yeah. So I'm not going to pretend to have a crystal ball and say I know how this is going to play out, but I will say I think the base expectation is he's a little bit better than last year in terms of like the underlying metrics, and maybe he runs a little hot, and so maybe he's that I'm going to do it again, like 9, 10, 11 goal guy.
Yeah.
If he plays consistent minutes, and I think 9, 10, 11 goal, a strike rate like that should keep him in the lineup.
Yeah.
Because ultimately he still has huge athletic advantages, and
Yeah.
like he's good enough to be playing for a team like United, at least in the form they are right now.
Totally.
And so
Yeah.
he's going to play a big role, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then we might not spend too long here, but the defense last year was just so horrifically bad that for FPL, I mean, like, honestly, if you want to just be like, forget about our defense, I'm totally on board with that, because I'm not putting a United defender in my team.
Yeah, I would say forget about the defense. Like,
Yeah.
people have made there's been a lot of talk about changes in tactical approach that are going to, totally change the way the team plays. I've watched preseason. I've seen how we've approached games tactically. The problems are, I mean, I don't know if you told me you didn't watch preseason, but we played Liverpool the other day.
Yeah. I was out of town.
It was not better.
Right.
And it was not different. Now, I'm not really of the opinion that you can tell what's going to happen during the season from preseason, but you can tell what's not going to happen.
Yes.
I can tell you what's not going to happen is that this is not going to suddenly be a top 4 defense overnight.
Right.
I mean, maybe over the course of the season they sort things out, but I wouldn't bank on it the first half at the very least, based on what I've seen.
And the injuries.
Yep, and the injuries. I mean, like, Euro's hurt. That said, I think Euro's a really cool prospect. I don't think he's going to be like a star off the blocks.
Yeah.
He's a kid. Like, it's going to take him some time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
it was at least something to hang your hat on. It was like, oh, new center back, new look, back four kind of thing. Shaw back, you could like talk yourself into it, but getting closer and closer to season, like injury here, injury there. It's just like, oh man, I'm not going there again. But I am curious, just maybe last question on the defense is just like, what was the big change? And maybe the answer is just fitness between, sort of the 22-23 season where they were a fine defense. They're like middle of the pack, to last year where they were just legitimately relegation level defending.
Yeah. The big difference was the way the press was structured. And I won't nerd out too much on this because you really only need to know the broad strokes of it. But basically, the front line got too far separated from the back line. The back line was kind of playing like it was a mid block, and the front line was pressing as if it was like the Bundesliga. And there was really no reconciliation between the two until like the last 3 matches of the season. At which point, obviously, it was far too late. But the result was the games got really stretched, which meant tons of transitions, so transition opportunities, and B, tiring legs, which meant injuries and more transition opportunities. And it became very difficult to defend set pieces because of exhaustion, and you can't jump as high when you're tired from running. And a variety of other factors. So we just hemorrhage shots. And if we approach games the same way this season, the same thing will happen. I suspect it won't be as bad for a variety of reasons. If there's more
hard to be as bad. Yeah,
exactly. It's hard to be as bad. I also think, talking about the new set piece coach, he is known for defensive set pieces more than anything else. Like when he was with Arsenal, his name is Andreas Jorgensen. When he was with Arsenal, they were the best defensive set piece team in the league. When he was with Southampton last year, they were one of the best defensive set piece teams in their league. When he was with Brentford 4 years ago, they were the best defensive set piece team in the
love
championship.
to get someone with Brentford in their resume. So that's got to be an improvement. Yeah.
So you'd think from at least that phase, which was a big part of United's defensive issues, they'd be better. But you never know.
You never know. And then I guess I'll just round it out with just a couple questions on transfers. I mean, it sort of seemed like, I don't know, Twitter is just such a minefield these days. But Mazraoui like maybe agreed, and he might come in. And I was kind of curious if you want to talk about him. Is he cover for both fullbacks? Is he maybe going to start at left back? Whatever. And then De Ligt has been rumored all summer, and now with the Euro injury, I mean, I guess there's probably even more pressure to get that over the line. So maybe talk about a couple of those guys.
Sure. So Mazraoui, I think he probably is covered for both fullback positions, at least
Okay.
in one form or another, because he either Shaw goes down and he plays left back, or Shaw goes down and Dalla will play left back because
Okay.
Malacia looks like he's not going to be available the first few months.
What happened to Malacia? Yeah, he's just been.
No one knows.
No one
Like
knows.
literally,
Yeah.
no one knows. He was out for literally 18 months without even nothing on his social media, nothing on club social media, nothing on the club website. There was
So bizarre.
absolutely no trace of him. And then he was just back in training this year. And now he's hurt again.
Man United are so weird, man.
Yeah, it's been a strange decade. But so Mazraoui will play. I think there's a decent chance Mazraoui plays a lot of minutes if he comes.
Yeah.
If he's not hurt himself, he's a bit injury prone. But if he does play and United aren't awful, he could score a lot of goals. He has like a very long history of just goal contributions playing at fullback. He's like first of all, he's talented on the ball. Second of all, he has a really good sense of space in the box and like finding underlapping opportunities. And if he were to start, I'm not sure he would make United drastically better, but I think if he got theoretically, he starts 38 matches, I wouldn't be surprised if he finished with double-digit goal and assist contributions.
Wow.
But he won't start 38 matches. But.
Yeah, my radar is going off, though. I'm waiting for Shaw hurt, good fixtures, Mazraoui time. I like that. I like the sound of that. What about De Ligt?
Yeah, so I think he's a talented defender. I don't think he solves the problems United have had. I think you probably get that from what I was saying earlier. The defensive issues United have are systemic. It's great to bring in better players. Playing Johnny Evans is not helping the defensive issues, but Johnny Evans is also not the root of the defensive issues. And so, as much as I think it's a move in broad strokes, he's young, he's good, he's athletic, physically imposing, strong aerially. All of these things are great. I still have no faith in United being a defense where you're interested in the FPL players.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, man. Well, I kept you a little longer than I said I would, but it's always good to hear from you, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course, anytime.
All right, rock and roll. Thanks.